We are live. We are live. Welcome to Saturday Night is All Right for PATC College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything, and I mean everything in college football because we love college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to support this college football rebel outpost channel with a donation, just hit the $, make a comment, and we'll get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome one and all. Welcome in to the studio that sits on the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend with your comments in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. And it is June 29th. June 29th. It's been a month and a day. A month and a day that college football's Peek Around the Corner had to go into the sports book on any given Saturday sports book and rip down the odds and what we speculate into what was going to happen with the ACC implosion in which school goes where. A lot of people have been asking me, why, Greg? Why? Greg, why? And I cannot tell you all that we have been told. We can't tell you all the reasons we flip-flopped And we've already taken the L on that. If you want me to take the L on that again tonight, I will. We'll take the L. But we got to go where the story goes. And so I can't get into all of it, but I'm going to push the envelope just a little bit more tonight on why the Big Ten is going to be very deliberate, very cautious during this next realignment wave. Now, I'm going to use one example of why they're going to be deliberate and cautious. I'm going to give you one example why I had to rip down the Florida State and Clemson to the Big Ten. The Big Ten was going to rush in when those schools became available after the settlement. I'm going to give you one example. There are others. Nothing. All these schools that we talk about are fine universities. Some of these schools have incredible brand value, great athletic department, great fan base, great location, great market, great history, great boosters, the combination of thereof. But there is a certain reality. We're focusing tonight on the Big Ten. I'll get to the SEC later this week. Not tomorrow. Not Monday, because we're doing our Big Ten, our SEC prediction, order to finish prediction. We're going to be doing that on Monday on the SEC. We're not going to do any more than that on a Monday when it comes to the SEC and this ACC implosion. We're going to focus in on the Big Ten. I know the Big Ten. They know me. And I've gotten in a whole lot of trouble with the Big Ten. They did not want to be Houston chronicled when we broke the USC story. There is a certain the Big Ten is now 18 schools. The larger the conference, more different interests are at stake. They're all going to put their voice into the pot. It becomes more difficult to manage. The Big Ten is going to be making bank. They're going to make a whole lot of money in the next media negotiations. They're a made man, so to speak, if you want to talk about college football mafia. They are the made man, just like the SEC. They're going to want to make sure they keep their spot when it comes to the marketplace of college athletics. The SEC is going to do the same thing. They're going to be looking out, the people in Birmingham have their telescopes. They're looking at Chicago, and Chicago is looking at Birmingham. The interest in the Big Ten, and we're focusing on the Big Ten only tonight. We'll do a little bit of the SEC only because you kind of have to do that. But everybody, when the Big Ten expanded with Oregon and Washington, and we were the ones that told you that it was going to be Oregon and Washington before the Big Ten went to the East, that Kevin Warren would have to leave his office. He did. Big 12 was going to have to crack into the Pac-12. A couple of times they did. And then Oregon and Washington would come on in, and they did. And the Oregon and Washington, the combination greased each other's skids. if you go back and you listen to President Casey of Washington and how she described it, she said, we weren't going in if Oregon wasn't going in. And if you hear people of Oregon say, we weren't going to go in unless Washington went in to the Big Ten. Oregon and Washington scratched everybody's backs. They satisfied everybody's interest. When the Big Ten expanded with Rutgers in Maryland, you can go ahead and Google this, but it was said in public and in private that Rutgers was not going to be school number 16 if Maryland wasn't going to be that Rutgers wasn't going to be school 14 if Maryland wasn't going to be school 13. Remember, the Big Ten struck out on North Carolina. The Big Ten struck out on Virginia. The Big Ten struck out on Georgia Tech at that time. But they weren't, Rutgers was reliant on Maryland. Oregon and Washington were reliant on each other. I'm not taking a shot at those two schools. They are incredible universities. I'm going to show you. So is Rutgers in Maryland. I'm going to show you. But again, everybody's interest in the Big Ten has to be checked off. That's how it is, ladies and gentlemen. So, a lot of times, schools are relying on each other. Missouri was reliant on Texas A&M. We're going to go in to the U.S. News Global Research Rankings. We're going to look at the rankings. Now, again, this is only one metric, only one way of measuring research value. This is just one. There's many of them out there. And this is a global look at global universities. Over 2,000 universities were ranked. Every school that I talk about tonight is a great university. All of them. But I got to show you something. And then we got to talk about the history of the Big Ten. Again, let's set a couple ground rules down before I go through this. Number one, being a great research university doesn't automatically get you in the Big Ten. Of course it doesn't. It's an athletic conference. Do you see California, Berkeley in the Big Ten? Do you see Stanford in the Big Ten? You got to bring the goods on the athletic side of it. You got to be committed. You got to have a certain value. You know all this. But we're talking about checking off everybody's box within the Big Ten. That includes the Big Ten presidents, the Big Ten sponsors, Fox, and marginally CBS and NBC. But mainly the presidents, Fox, sponsors, a little bit on the boosters. Everybody's got it. All their interests have to be checked off. And the final decisions on expansion gets done at the very last moment. Because things can change. We're talking about why the Big Ten is going to be deliberate and cautious when it comes to the next expansion wave. One of the reasons why we're only going to spend 1 minute on it is the SEC. The Big Ten, while they have an expansion list, and they will get it out, they will talk about it. They're not going to have any first-party talks with anybody. But there is a perception that the SEC could control a lot of what is about to happen, whenever it happens. So the Big Ten is, there's only so much they can do. And there is 2 tent poles when it comes to Big Ten expansion. One is Notre Dame and the other is North Carolina. It looks like North Carolina won't be available to the Big Ten. But the Big Ten is going to run out that ground ball. They're going to make sure that North Carolina definitely is not attainable. The Big Ten is going to make sure of that. And then the Big Ten is going to make sure that Notre Dame is once again going to reject them. And then the Big Ten is going to figure out what's before them. And everybody's interest has to be taken care of. And this is one part of it. We're going to get to it. I want to thank everybody for coming on in at the beginning of the show. It's going to be a very easy Saturday night is all right for PATC. We're only covering this one subject. I want to thank Kerry Goldnose for his incredible generosity to kick us off. Saturday night is a great night for PATC Night Show. Goldnose, thank you, Kerry Goldnose. Thank you for your incredible generosity. Once again, to start us off here on a Saturday night is all right. Let me thank the people who have come on in. Daniel Gorby, Tracy FSU, Jonathan Price, Humble Bumble Duck, Mr. Monkey says, Moen Vision, now play Freebird. One of these nights I'm going to sing that song, Freebird, Moen Vision, and you're not going to be around to hear it. You're not going to be around. Oh boy is in the house. Hawkeye is here. Expedition Greg, KS Bear Fan, the Big Lubbock, Two King Slots, Minnesota Seminole Scott is here. Tracy, FSU, LFG, Go Black 45, Rob Ellen. Whoa, Nelly, it's a Saturday night show. We almost didn't get it off the ground. I had to go to a baby shower. I showed you guys the picture of the plate of food that I was enjoying. Go to my X account at Flug Empire. I can't remember. I think it was Peruvian. I'm not sure, to be honest. A lot of very diverse Hispanic grouping that was in this large house way out west in Minnesota. Basically every Central American and most Latin American countries were represented. I think it was Peruvian. I'm not sure. It did not have this. It did have a sauce, but I did not have it. I think it was Peruvian. I could be wrong. Anyways, it don't matter. We're very fortunate. We've got this show kicked off. Let's have some fun. Mick Stevens is in the house. The Architect is here. David Kreitzer. Roman Maroney is here. Congo, Tough Tony. The Big East got a nice TV deal, $480 million. What, about $80 million a year? But it's going to, there's escalator clause and everything. I think I'm going to cover that more tomorrow or Monday. But I got to tell you, it's a big, I think other people might talk about it tonight. Maybe Immaculate, maybe Jamie, maybe other people will call in. It's a big, huge, massive basketball TV media deal. And we reported, about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. Man, the chatter behind the curtain, and everybody expecting basketball value to go way up. And we had to talk about it because I think, as crazy as it sounds, it's going to play a part in this next expansion wave. I know football drives the bus. Academics is a part of it. A whole bunch of things are a part of it. But I think the basketball value, the percentage of wherever you want to put basketball value, you're going to have to bump it up a little bit. Brett Yormark, Greg Sankey, and now you got evidence with the Big East deal. It's a factor. It's a larger factor than historically when it comes to realignment. And we said it, I don't know, maybe a month ago. I think it was maybe 2 months ago. We've said it a bunch of times on this show. Got raked over the coals a little bit. But I'm going to tell you something. The chatter has been heavy on that. And now you're seeing some of the evidence coming through. You might be see some. It was the It was the time when we reported that that if the SEC went to 20 schools and did not do it all in one wave this time, if they did like two and then did in two another 3 or 4 years down the road, we said that Kansas would be in play to be SEC's 20th school. And one of the reasons why was this: everybody's expecting college basketball value to just shoot up. That's when we first started, because that was the chatter. Of course, people went with it and said, Greg says Kansas is going to be the SEC's 20th school. Greg said that Kansas is talking to the SEC. That's what the Monty Show reported. This guy in Minnesota saying Kansas is talking with the SEC. Never said that. That would be impossible. They can't have first party talk. Whatever. Don't want to go down that road. But what I'm saying is, this Big East, big deal, big TV deal is a big deal, and it does not come as a surprise to the PATC community. Although this was a bigger TV deal than pretty much anybody expected. RT is in the house. Terry Kane is here. Skaven, yes, Richard Jones, T5 Terps. Jan is in the house. Two King Slots is here. Steel Austin. Josie is here. Holy smokes. Bo Weevil, the big guy from Minnesota. Go Clemson. Joseph Kurlagon Jr. Thank you so much, Joseph, for coming on in. Appreciate it. Check it out is here. My prof is in the house. Rick Olson is here. Great 48 hours for Oregon. Rock and rant. These rankings are ridiculously confusing. It makes no sense for one school to be 20 spots behind another in the U.S. rankings, but then 60 spots ahead of the same school in the global ranking. because all these have different metrics. And so they weight things differently. And if you go look at the global ranking, I mean, they're ranking wildlife and fish research. I mean, they're ranking, they've got all these categories. Right? And so, and again, it depends on what do you value most. I mean, of course, medical research, right, is what most people. So I don't want to get too deep in the I've got these schools set up in tiers when it comes to research value. I got them put into tiers. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5. And then we're going to look at the history of Big Ten expansion. And then I'm going to tie it in to what we've been told. Not everything. I can't go into everything. But I'm going to push the envelope a little bit more tonight to explain why we believe here at Peek Around the Corner the Big Ten is going to be deliberate, cautious during the next conference realignment wave. So don't get too hung up on that school shouldn't be higher than me, or they're basically, there's a consensus out there when it comes to research impact value. And if you're a Tier 3, Tier 4 school, Tier 5, you're still a fantastic university. We're relating this list to the history of conference realignment. And I think you're going to see something. Hopefully I can paint you all a picture. Hopefully it's the fat guy Picasso from Minnesota tonight. Hopefully I can paint you a picture. Vox Quindaro is in the house. The Big Lubbock is here. John Grove, Movie Time Blues. Sean is here. Brickbat. Holy smokes. Lee is up. Lee is here. Greg Nelson is in the house. There are only about 3 to 5 schools that bring full value to the greedy 2. I simply don't believe that the Big Ten will give up on any of the remaining values. The Big Ten will definitely fight for Florida State and Clemson. Friends Call Me Sean is in the house. Clinton Moses, Anthony Carlson, Mr. Spartans is in the house. Matt is here. A lot of people are here at the beginning of the show. Holy smokes. The Grateful Trojan is back in the house. Holy smokes. The Grateful Trojan. Deadeye. Grassi is here. From Winnipeg, Manitoba. Go Gophers. Got a lot of Gopher fans in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Okay, let's get to it. Let's not waste any more time. It's a Saturday night. Is all right for PATC. Let's get into it. First of all, I got to figure out what I'm trying to figure out. Everybody give me a second here. Everybody give me a moment. Okay, so what we did is we put these universities into Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, on and on and on and on. Then we're going to connect you with the history of the Big Ten expansion. This is U.S. News, best global universities. These institutions from the U.S. and more than 100 other countries have been ranked based on 13 indicators that measure their academic research performance and their global and regional reputation. So there's a little bit of of a different variable, metrics that are put into the mix. Global and regional reputations. And remember, these schools are looking for, they're trying to attract more and more students, and that includes international students and especially the Southeastern Conference, because they do not, on average, attract as much, on average, international students. That's what they're going for. And there's a couple universities out there that are on their expansion list that are going to attract more international students. We've talked about that before. We'll get into more of that. Students can use, and they do, their high school uses them. It sort of pushes students into certain pathways and into certain alleyways. And here, this tier of schools you can possibly apply to and possibly get into, whatever. You know how it works. Students can use these rankings to explore higher education options that exist beyond their own country's borders and to compare key aspects of schools' research missions. There are the world's 2,250 top universities. 2,250. So every school we go through tonight is way above the middle of the 2,250. Every school we're talking about is an impactful, good research university. Now, let's get to it. I wanted to explain what this is. U.S. News Best Global Universities, 13 indicators, measure their academic research performance, yada, 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 yada. Okay, let's get into it. Give me a moment to set this up. Let me take a drink. U.S. News Best Global Universities. PATC Chalk Talk. Here we go. Big Ten rankings, number 1, Washington. Now we're going to go through the Big Ten rankings, and the global ranking is right next to the school, and then there's going to be a tier. We put them in tiers. Washington is the 7th most prestigious research university, 7th highest performing research university according to U.S. News Global. Number 7 global. It is a tier 1, obviously the top school in the Big Ten. And during the expansion of Washington and Oregon, we talked about Washington being wanted by Big Ten universities. They wanted them. They wanted to get them. But first, Kevin Warren had to leave because there were problems between Kevin Warren and Fox Sports. And then when he left, the legal counsel of the Big Ten kept saying, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can meet with Washington. We can meet with Oregon. But we can't do it because we don't want all the blood on our hands. Legal was cautious. Don't do it. Don't do it until the Big 12 can crack the Pac-12. And it happened, and it happened, and then it happened. Washington greased the skids for Oregon. And Oregon somewhat greased the skids for Washington. We said it at the time, and we're saying it tonight. Here's an example. Washington, number 1 with a bullet. Number 2 is UCLA, 11th global, tier 1 ranking. The UCLA Bruins. No surprise there. No surprise there. Number 3, Michigan, 19th global, tier 1. These schools stand on their own. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Michigan, number 3 ranking, number 19th global. Number 4, Northwestern, number 24th global, tier 1. And we still get comments from time to time. Northwestern's a bottom Big Ten feeder school. They're going to get kicked out. They should get kicked. That's not happening, ladies and gentlemen. That's not happening. Northwestern is a tier 1 research, incredible school. And now they're, putting $800 million into the football stadium? Northwestern, tier 1. Ohio State, and they keep making leaps. Tier 2, they're the top of the tier 2. Again, they can stand alone. Of course, the incredible brand, athletic department, probably overall the number 1 university when you talk about academics, athletic brand, the attraction. They can attract students from all over the globe. Ohio State's research is on the upswing just as much as their women's hockey program. Tier 2, Ohio State Buckeyes. And we're going to get into why we're talking. There's a reason why I'm going through this. Okay? Number 6, Minnesota Golden Gophers. University of Minnesota has been slippy. They're having meetings on it. They're trying to figure it out. Of course, they do over $1 billion in research expenditure. They're a huge, massive research university, but they're not climbing the way they think they should be doing. So we'll see what happens there. Number 7, Maryland. They're number 72 global. They are tier 2. The Maryland Terrapins. They are the school in which the Big Ten was having discussions with when they were having discussions with North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Rutgers. In Maryland, Jim Delaney wanted the Big Ten to be a 2-region conference. No more could they just be the Midwest and Penn State. They needed to get into the second region for demographic purposes. More students, alumni living there. They wanted the alumni children to go to Big Ten universities in the Midwest. Maryland needed to say yes for Rutgers to be added. Maryland said yes. A big-time research university. U.S. News Global has them number 72. Wisconsin, number 74, tier 2. In reality, Wisconsin is a tier 1. But we're using U.S. News Global. If you used other research metrics, Wisconsin's going to be number 1. They're going to be right with Northwestern. They're going to be right with Michigan. They're going to be ahead of Minnesota. They're going to be ahead of Ohio State. It just so happens with this grouping of metrics, they're probably the university that gets dropped down the most, but who cares? Everybody knows Wisconsin and Madison is a big time, very important research university, and they've got their own faction going on with Michigan. There's a lot of power between those two universities. But the next realignment wave, the power resides at Ohio State. We've talked about that previously. Ohio State acquiesced to Oregon and Washington, which Wisconsin and Michigan wanted, and Nebraska and Minnesota. But Michigan and Wisconsin were thumbs up for Oregon and Washington. Ohio State acquiesced, but now everybody's going to have to acquiesce to Ohio State. We've talked about that before, and we're definitely going to be talking about that in the future. Wisconsin, number 8 in the Big Ten rankings, 74 global. Number 9, a new Big Ten university, along with UCLA, along with Washington, along with Oregon, the USC, Southern Cal, the Trojans. Number 9, big time private university. Northwestern, USC. It's more difficult for a private, in many ways, more difficult for private universities to be on top of the list, but USC is sitting there as a tier 2 out of 2,250 universities global. USC is 79. Yep, I did it again. Penn State, number 10. They are tier 3. Okay, we're going into the tier 3 universities. When it comes to research, according to U.S. News Global, Penn State, number 3, 96 overall. Illinois, tier 3. The Fighting Illini, 100 on the list. Number 12, Michigan State, 123 on the list, tier 3. Indiana, 135 on the U.S. News Global list, tier 3. All fantastic research universities. Number 14, Rutgers, 148, tier 3. Now, if you take a look, they came in with Maryland. Maryland was a tier 2. Rutgers was a tier 3. I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that. Now, they both came in mainly for the Big Ten to grow in the East, to become a 2-region conference, demographics, but Maryland greased the skids somewhat for Rutgers when it came to the Big Ten presidents, but Rutgers is a fine research university. A tier 2 and a tier 3 schools came in together. Remember what I just said. A tier 2 and a tier 3 school came in together. Purdue, 167, tier 3. Iowa, 225, tier 4. Iowa's the 16th ranked Big Ten school, and the 16th ranked Big Ten school in the SEC is in the thousands. That's the difference. Iowa at 225. They're in their own tier 4 when it comes to this. Number 17, Oregon. They're tier 6. There is no tier 5 right now in the Big Ten. Oregon is at 394. Oregon came in with Washington. Washington is a tier 1. According to U.S. Global, they're number 7. According to other U.S. rankings, they're in the top 10. Fox Sports wanted Oregon, as we reported for months. That came right out of Fox. So, you see how Oregon and Washington, that combination checked off all the boxes? You guys see where I'm going with this? Washington helped Oregon. Oregon helped Washington. Maryland helped Rutgers. Rutgers did help a little bit when it came to the population, demographics, cable box. New York media, a little bit of that. We'll get back to that here when we're talking about future expansion. Oregon, number 17. Number 18. Nebraska. They're tier 7, all alone. Now, Nebraska has been slipping and sliding. Basically, every metric you want to look at. There have been at least 3 different articles in the last 3-4 months depicting Nebraska. Well, it started in January. Excuse me. It's been more than 3 or 4 months. Actually, I think it started in December of last year, but whatever. Depicting Nebraska being worried about their standing in the Big Ten. They're worried about their future in the Big Ten. President Carter put out an email when he was the president at Nebraska. Now he's the president of Ohio State. We read you those emails. Trev Alberts talked about it when he was the athletic director. The interim president at Lincoln, Nebraska is talking about it. Now, I don't believe Nebraska's going to get kicked out. I don't believe they're in probation. They might be in probation, but Nebraska is not doing the other non-AAU schools in schools that are ranked around Nebraska's tier any favors. While I don't think Nebraska is in danger of getting kicked out, the Big Ten is not interested in bringing in a school where 10 years from now, they're dragging their feet on hiring faculty for research. It's not gone well. Now, Nebraska is a huge fan base. They spend the money. We all know that. 90,000 people. It's an incredible fan base. But the Big Ten, now Nebraska came in alone. They were AAU and then they got booted out of the AAU by other Big Ten schools. So, again, we got to bring that up. But Nebraska, Big Ten, tier 7. Now, we're going to go into some of the ACC schools. We're going to go through 8 of them. We're going to go through the Magnificent 7 schools. And then we're also going to throw in Georgia Tech, the Rambling Wreck. We're going to throw them into the mix as well. And I want you to, we're going to go through them. I did not rank them 1 through, I didn't go 1 through 8, but I did start at the top. North Carolina, tier 1. Tier 1. I want you to keep that in your memory bank. That's very important. Global, U.S. News Global Ranking. The attraction of international students and U.S. students. And you guys know, North Carolina, big brand. They don't have a great football brand, but they're still a great athletic department, athletic brand. North Carolina. You all know this. And then, of course, you have this belief and now some evidence that basketball value is going to shoot up. Of course, it's not going to be as close in value to football. Nobody's arguing that. But when you're talking about basketball program values going up, it only helps a school like North Carolina. North Carolina, along with Notre Dame, is the number 1 target for the Big Ten. North Carolina is the number one target for the SEC. You can disagree with me. I'm okay. You can let me have it in the chat. You can let me have it, phone calls. But when it comes to the SEC presidents, it's North Carolina. The demographics, the growth of high school students, they're the 9th largest state in the country when it comes to population. They're not, and it's a state that is virgin country to the SEC and the Big Ten. And they're going to be the 7th largest state in the country in population by 2031. We're going to be going through an enrollment apocalypse. Started in 2025. It's going to jump off the cliff in the next 3 or 4 years after that. North Carolina is highly, 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 highly sought after. Georgia Tech is tier 2. Georgia Tech is tier 2 when it comes to U.S. news, global, impact, value, research, performance. They're right with the Buckeyes, the Gophers, the Terrapins, the Badgers, the Trojans. They're right in that mix. Now, Georgia Tech is in a big market, but there's such a drop-off to Georgia. Now, they are raising some money. They've got some rich boosters. They're raising some money. They're trying to rebuild. They know about this next realignment wave. Georgia Tech, I know there's some drinking games out there when it comes to college football mafia and everybody. We may here at Peek Around the Corner, we may have to start talking about Georgia Tech. I've been telling you for months that the name Georgia Tech has not been brought up to me. It's never come across my desk. Well, that has changed a little bit. A little bit. Long shot, but a live shot. I think you're just going to have to keep that in your pocket. Again, people are going to be saying, Greg Pflugar says Georgia Tech to the Big Ten, just like they said Kansas to the SEC. No, I'm not reporting that. I'm just saying, for the first time here, we're going to keep them in mind. That's all I'm saying. And it has nothing to do with this information. It has to do with information that we've been told. So it's not because we all know that Georgia Tech is a great university, great research university. We've all known that for a long, long, long time. Remember, the Big Ten targeted Georgia Tech, had discussions with them 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago. Okay. Virginia, 125 global. Tier 3. They're right with Penn State, Illinois, Michigan State, Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue. They're in that tier 3. A great university, just like the universities I just named off. Now, if you look at the combination of a tier 1 North Carolina and a tier 3 Virginia, right? You start, it's two big states, population states, demographic money to be used for schools to go into the college. It is Virginia and North Carolina are the top targets for the SEC. And they would be for the Big Ten, obviously. Virginia 125 Tier 3. Now, their athletic department is not as valuable as many of these ACC schools. Really not even close. Basketball program's gone up. Non-revenue Olympic sports, they're pretty good at. But when it comes to the football program, it's flatlined. As we all know. Miami, Tier 4, number 241. Miami is right with Iowa, Tier 4. AAU school, just like Iowa. Miami just became an AAU school. And if you go into, they provide some unique research, top rankings in research, freshwater things that other Big Ten schools don't do. So Miami brings a unique research type of stuff if they were ever enter into the Big Ten, just like they do with their unique big market. Miami, Tier 4. The U. North Carolina State, 262, Tier 4. Just with Iowa, with Miami, North Carolina State knocking on the door for AAU, and they've been knocking on that door for quite a while. They didn't get here in the last time. Maybe they'll get in next time. Virginia Tech at the bottom end of Tier 4, 278. And then Florida State is Tier 5, an emerging research university. They're ranked higher than Oregon. Oregon is a Tier 6. Nebraska is a Tier 7. Florida State, a 5 tier. And then the Clemson Tigers are 703, Tier 9. And we know that Clemson has grown their research by quite a bit in the last 8 years, just like Florida State. They've grown their research and development expenditures at a much higher percentage than a Big Ten school of Nebraska. Clemson has a goal for AAU in 2035. They keep improving. Now, I did this for a reason. We're talking about the Big Ten going to be very deliberate and cautious. And they've got a lot of interest that they have to check off. Notre Dame, I did not do Notre Dame. I think they were like 400 on this. It doesn't matter what Notre Dame is on this. Notre Dame is a private university, Catholic, but they're and nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying their worth is it's already known. In fact, their value is so high that we already know in the Big Ten contract that if Notre Dame decide to join the Big Ten, that everybody's value, everybody payouts would go up. Even though they'd be adding a slice to the economic pie, CBS, NBC, Fox, they've all agreed that they're going to pay more for everybody. So Notre Dame doesn't even have to be part of any of this. Notre Dame greases everybody's skids. Notre Dame can bring anybody with them. So keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about May 28th. I was told to pull back. Pull back on your sportsbooks odds. Rip it down. There is no chalk for the Big Ten. Big Ten is going to be deliberate and cautious. They got to know they got to have the interest. They got to fulfill the interest of everybody. Fox, all the presidents, their sponsorships. And if you go look back at the history of the Big Ten, a Clemson at 703, a Clemson at a tier 9, and a Florida State at a tier 5. That combination of schools to fulfill everybody's interest probably is not going to happen. It would be something in which all other doors would need to be closed on the Big Ten. It would not satisfy, it probably would not satisfy the Big Ten presidents. It just won't. There is no history of the Big Ten taking on a combination like that. It doesn't mean that Florida State's is an emerging research university. Clemson is climbing up. Now there's quite a gap between Florida State and Clemson. But that combination isn't going to be something that the Big Ten is going to rush in and do. It may end up at the end of the day, maybe it's going to be Florida State and Clemson. But it ain't happening. It ain't happening right after those two schools become available. We were told to rip those odds down. That's not the chalk. Now, let me ask you a question. Let me get out of this. Hold on. Now I'm gonna ask some questions. I gotta wait for my chat to slow down here. Holy smokes. So Washington greased Oregon's skids. Oregon did grease Washington's skids, but did two different pathways. Maryland and Rutgers, similar situation. Similar, not quite the same. You should look at the SEC. We'll do that next week. SEC, later next week. Texas A&M, greased the skids. Missouri. Texas and Oklahoma. Texas greased the... Oklahoma is like 503. Texas is I don't know. I can't remember what they are. Maybe in the top 60. For the Big Ten, let's take a look at Florida State. An emerging research university, big-time football brand. A whole lot of people in the Big Ten would be interested. But the reason why we put the pause on it is Florida State is going to have to find the right partner. And Clemson is not the partner. At least, probably not. That's the situation that we're in. This is what we were told. Now, we've been talking to a lot of people. but there's been a couple people that have knocked us over the head. So when I saw Michigan's president, Ono, when I saw his tweet, and when I went into this, I said, okay, let's push the envelope. Let's give one of the reasons why the Big Ten is pausing. There is no history. Clemson and Florida State would fulfill Fox. Now, Fox hasn't given approval. It's not even down to that. We're nowhere near that part. But obviously, Fox would be interested in Florida State for all the reasons. Go get it into Florida. The Big Ten wants to get into Florida. Ticket sales, incredible fan base, incredible brand, unbelievable, valuable brand. But what would be Florida State's partner? Ryan Willie, the evil badger. Greg, you'll be crying on the little general's shoulder when you realize you'll be singing On Wisconsin. I tried eating a plain burger Friday and almost choked because it was so dry. Burgers got to have cheese. Oh my God. Thank you, Ryan Willie, for your incredible generosity. Thank you for helping us keep the lights on, Evil Badger. I do appreciate it. We'll talk more about that Wisconsin-Minnesota game. A lot of you people are sleeping on my Gophers, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. And of course, burgers do not need cheese. You just don't know how to prepare your burger. But thank you, Ryan Willie. I do appreciate it. So what would help grease the skids for Florida State? Now, I know a lot of people are saying Florida State skids don't need greasing. They don't need greasing. And maybe eventually they don't need greasing because they're such a big brand. But I'm not talking about the Big Ten has shut the door in Florida State. I'm talking about why the Big Ten has a pause. They're going to be deliberate. They're going to be cautious. The Big Ten is going to look and make sure that North Carolina is definitely not available to them. The Big Ten is going to make sure that Notre Dame is still refusing to leave football independence. They're going to knock on those doors. They're going to open those doors. They're going to talk, first-party talks, when and if there's a settlement in the ACC. Not if, but when. A North Carolina and a Florida State? Yeah. A Notre Dame and a Florida State? Oh, yeah. But now ask yourself this question. Ask yourself this question. For the Big Ten, if North Carolina and Notre Dame are the tent poles, and they are, you answer this question. What type of relationship does Florida State have with North Carolina? What type of relationship does Florida State have with Notre Dame? Ask yourself another question. North Carolina and the SEC, we've talked about it, circle their wagons around North Carolina. They want North Carolina. The Big Ten might not be able to. The Board of Governors lean SEC, What if North Carolina is not attainable to the Big Ten? What if Notre Dame just says, no, we're good until 2030? And then we'll look at it again. So who else? Virginia? I got to tell you, what we have heard is Virginia's going to be that connective tissue to North Carolina. I know a lot of people are talking about Duke in North Carolina. If it's Duke in North Carolina, it's probably going to be Duke, North Carolina in Virginia, and then something else. Because what we've heard is Virginia is that connective tissue to North Carolina. If the Board of Governors at North Carolina somehow can figure out what they're going to do with North Carolina State. That's a whole nother subject. So what if North Carolina Big Ten can't get there? Notre Dame, Big Ten can't get there. Now you're looking at Miami. Now you're looking at Georgia Tech. Is a Florida State Miami. We've talked about it before. In fact, it was the first thing we really speculated. Is that blend, would that satisfy everybody's interest in the Big Ten? A Florida State Miami. So and I think there's a chance for that to happen. But that could be it. I mean, that could be the combination. Because Miami is big market, Florida State, we've talked about it before. They seem to be the blend that would work if the Big Ten can't hit their top targets of North Carolina, Notre Dame. Miami greases the skids a little bit of Florida State. Florida State definitely helps Miami. And then you got the possibility, I think it's more of a longer shot, of a Georgia Tech, Florida State. But here's the thing. There is just too many variables. The Big Ten is not going to rush in. When these schools with an offer, they're gonna rush in, they're gonna have meetings and everything, but they're going to make sure they have the information they need with North Carolina and Notre Dame. They're gonna check those doors first. And it's not going to be a one-day process. It's not going to be a 2-day process. Florida State is in the game, obviously. We believe Miami is in the game. North Carolina is definitely in the game. So is Virginia, the connective tissue with North Carolina, big public university. And, Notre Dame, of course. This is why we put the pause. One of the reasons why. There are other reasons. The Big Ten is an 18-team conference. There are things I just can't talk about yet. But I decided I could bring this up because it was told to us. The combination of Clemson and Florida State is not going to be something that they jump into. It just is not, because it will not satisfy the Big Ten presidents. So nothing is done. There's been no offers. Florida State is on the candidates list. Miami is on the candidate list. Clemson is on the candidate list. Georgia Tech is on the candidates list. Virginia is on the candidates list for the Big Ten. And, of course, Notre Dame. Those are 6 schools. And a large part of whatever happens resides in the hands of the SEC in what they do. There's a very good chance that the Big Ten is going to have to wait. Or the Big Ten is not going to be able to. It's just the way it is. So for everybody who's been real upset with me, who is not willing to dive in and say this is going to happen, that is going to happen, because we don't know. There's too many variables. And this is just one example why. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint, wink, wink. I'm not going to go any further than this. And then we're going to get to your phone calls. Remember, I'm giving you all a big wink. And if you can call me up and ask me to expand on it, I can't. You can tell me in the chat room. You can give me a $5,000 super chat, and I won't be able to answer the question. So do not give me a super chat of $1, because I cannot. No matter what you do, I cannot expand on what I'm about to say. I'm saying this because you are the PATC community. I'm saying this because you guys have given me so much support. There are certain rules in realignment. We've gone over basically a little bit of one of them, giving you an example. Everybody's interest has to be taken care of in these larger and larger and larger conferences. Realignment never sleeps. Media partners play a big part in it. But remember, there's another rule. There's another rule in realignment we talk about all the time. Relationships. Relationships. Peer relationships between universities, between the leaders of those universities, between the athletic directors of those universities, the history of those universities. Relationships matter. That's also another reason why we don't know what's going to happen, because there's a lot of mix going on. There's a lot of groupings of good relationships going on, and it matters. It always has mattered. Sometimes more than others. This time, it really matters. Too many variables, some big ones, like the one I just told you. I'm not going to expand on it. I'm not going to talk about specific schools. There it is. Give me a call. Let it rip. Talk about the Big East. New media contract. Now, I didn't really talk about Duke. If you want to talk about Duke, that's fine. California and Stanford have a global U.S. News global ranking of 3 and 5, or I don't know. It's something like 3 or 5. I've got it written down somewhere. I can't find it. It don't matter. I think they're in the single digits. I know they both are. It don't matter. But did that get them to the Big Ten? No. Neither one of them could scratch each other's back. Neither one of them could help the other when it comes to the other interest, Fox Sports. Neither one of them could help out Fox Sports. Right? So again, it ain't just about the rate, Florida State's got a huge brand. Clemson's got a huge brand. But you got to be able to satisfy everybody. So I'm going to get to, let's open up those phone lines. 763 260 1333 763 260 1333. The lines are open. Thank you, Kerry Go Nose and the Evil Badger, Ryan Willie, for your incredible generosity. Thank you so very much. I'm trying to.
Call from
Edward, the Auburn Tiger.
Edward, Mr. Auburn Tigers. Hugh Freeze on the march. The floor is yours.
Greg, this probably is one of your greatest shows ever.
Wow. Now, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult because...
No, it's the highest compliment.
Okay, all right.
You have been in the foxhole for the last 3 weeks.
I've been in the foxhole for the last 3 years, my friend.
Yeah, but I'm serious that the temperature has raised over the last couple of weeks.
Yes, sir, it has.
Especially when you said you had to tear down the expectations.
Yeah.
And start from scratch.
Yeah,
I have felt.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have felt bad. I have felt bad for you. I am an SEC guy. I love your show.
Thank you.
You have been honest. You have been forthright. You have been a straight shooter.
I appreciate it.
And I'm gonna be honest with you. For you to even have gone through what you have gone through, it's even made me upset.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do this show with passion. You do this show with your hearers in your heart, and you always give it your best shot.
I appreciate it. Thank you for those kind words.
Even though you have Big Ten roots, you give it your best shot.
Now,
so
are you going to say those same kind words if I put Auburn a little bit too low on my predictions come Monday? And I'm not saying I'm going to have them low. You guys got that freshman wide receiver that's going to make some big impact this year. But are you going to be a little upset with me if I have them a little bit too low on Monday?
Actually, I'm not going to be upset. This is not our year. This is a step building year. Auburn tends to do well when they're picked low.
Yeah.
And so they're one of those teams that can really, really make things happen. I see 7 wins, maybe 8 wins this year, but I see us maybe beating a team we shouldn't have beat, and so I really feel like we have a good vibe this year, and so I'm not going to be disappointed. The SEC is going to be a murderous road this year.
Yeah.
And so it just is. The league is with Texas and Oklahoma coming in.
Yeah.
It's just going to be fierce.
Yeah.
But I want to say once again, thank you for the job you've done. And you when you've been wrong, you've taken the L, but 95% of the time you have been very accurate. Which kind of blows my mind with the feedback you've been getting.
Yeah.
But let me say this. I felt like me and you, we made some tremendous announcements last Saturday when we talked about the SEC eating first, second, third, and fourth.
Could be.
ESPN and SEC is the elephant in the room. Now, I want to remind you of something, Greg. You remember when the Big Ten made their television deal, their contract, major contract? Who are the players? Fox, NBC, and CBS.
Yes, sir.
Who was not included in that contract?
ESPN.
ESPN/ABC.
Yeah, yeah.
Fast forward to where we are now. I don't think the ESPN and SEC would get an opportunity like this ever again. Their ESPN is in the catbird seat. They can control the pieces on the board because they have the money and they have the power. And I would personally believe this situation is kind of like a person laying concrete. You lay it, and the more it sits, the more it cures and dries and hardens. And I believe you made this statement at the beginning of the broadcast today. You said that ESPN and SEC, I'm paraphrasing, is many in the Big Ten circles, they believe that they're driving the train. Is that correct, Greg?
I think they believe it's a possibility.
Okay, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
All right. Now think about this. They can absolutely take over the college football game by adding more than 4 teams. You have all of these teams, and they know by adding any combination of these teams, their value is going to increase. Remember your Florida State money purse said this right here. It says, number one, they noticed that Oklahoma and Texas value had exponentially increased before they even officially joined the SEC. And so the SEC is going to multiply everyone's brand that comes into this conference.
Yeah.
And ESPN knows that. They know that.
Yeah.
I personally believe that ESPN is not going to allow many teams of value and potential to even be available at the end of this realignment. And this could go down to be the most unprecedented conference realignment that we've ever seen. And I'm going to say this, and I know you got other callers.
Yeah.
What was the gentleman that, two things. Another thing I've noticed in your show, I've been watching your show since you started. Every school that's been involved in the realignment, it's like they can't believe what's happening to their school. Like, for instance, I remember hearing about Utah. They never thought that Utah would ever go to the Big 12, and they did. Mm-hmm. You know, all of these schools. And it seems to be the same way with Florida State. It can go either way. We know that.
Yeah.
But you remember the gentleman that was, I think he was a Utah Ute. He told you years ago, he don't even call your show. He said he'll never call your show again because he was so mad that you said Utah was going to join the Big 12.
Yeah.
Remember he said something about 8 teams going to the SEC?
Yeah, that was Western Civic. He said a bunch of schools going to go to the Big Ten.
That. Now, I am not saying he's right at all.
Yeah.
And if you told me that that's not even a shot, I would absolutely believe you because you've been right on the money. But think about ESPN being left out of that Big Ten contract. And they know the industry moving forward. They're not going to get an opportunity like they have right now to capitalize. It will not blow me away to hear, just my opinion, from 4 to 8 teams from the ACC going to the SEC. To totally block the Big Ten, to totally block Fox, to corner the market moving forward because of what was done. You said relationships, Greg. Well, network and conference relationships does matter too. They matter in realignment. They matter. What if the Big Ten had added the ESPN and /ABC instead of one of those other networks? How would this conference realignment look now?
Hold on a second.
I don't know.
The little general has just brought something in. Did you win this? The little general has won this at the baby shower that I was at where I showed you guys.
Oh, man.
Look at that.
I love it.
Look at that. I am going to just go like this.
Hey, listen, that has to be a permanent fixture, Greg.
Well, it ain't going to be. It's not going to be the candy in there is not going to be permanent fixture.
I guess how many candy?
Oh, you guessed correctly. How much candy was in there?
300.
300. That's how you want it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you, Little General. Sorry, Mr. Auburn Tiger. Go ahead.
Hey, listen. No, you interrupt with me with Little General anytime.
Yeah.
Please.
But I share with the kids.
Yeah, thank you.
Why it's not
And so that's, I've been thinking about this, and that's kind of what's been, you said relationships matter. Conferences and their network relationships matter as well. And ESPN, I know they had to feel a job by that situation.
Yeah.
They didn't get part of that Big Ten. And they're not going to put themselves in that situation moving forward.
Yeah.
And I absolutely believe that they know they have to capitalize, because the entire college football era is really laying in the balance of who controls it moving forward.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? How do you feel about what I'm saying?
I think the Big Ten believes it's a possibility. And one of the multiple reasons why there's no way we had to tear down the odds. One of the reasons, there's many of them.
But Greg, we know.
And I made a little video on it on X, talking about what you just said. So yeah, the Big Ten believes it's a possibility. And therefore, the Big Ten's going to have to see what the aftermath of that is. I'm just, again, the Big Ten is not printing out placards of these ACC schools and putting them on the wall and planning. They're not. I would call the Big Ten not being active right now. They're waiting on a lot of things. So, but Auburn Tiger guy, I appreciate the call. I'm going to go to the next caller here. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for those kind words.
You have a great day.
You too. Call again, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Auburn Tiger, man, he can. Beautiful call. Thank you, Auburn Tiger.
Call from
Jamie Thornton.
Jamie Thornton is on the line. Mrs. Arkansas Razorback. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Woo, pig suey, Greg.
There you
I want to
go.
definitely I want to congratulate the little general, and I that's awesome.
Yeah, she won
She
something.
won there. I mean, yeah, that's always fun. I think it's been like 12 years since I've won something like that. So
Yeah.
we had a corporate thing at this place called Incredible Pizza Cafe, and it was really cool. So I was like, yeah, well, it was a lot of fun. But I wish you and the little general the happiness of a double cheeseburger with pepper jack and cheddar cheese melted all across it. So.
That happened. If you notice hold on a second. Hold on. If you noticed here, I'm going to put up on the screen. You see that food? You see that food before you?
Oh, that looks delicious.
Well, there is no cheese on that, right? There's no cheese on that chicken.
I
There's
have
no
to agree
cheese
that
on
still
that
looks
chicken.
fabulous.
They
Even
don't
without the
serve
cheese
it
bread.
that way. They don't smother their rice with cheese, their beans with cheese. There is a room for cheese in the world, but not when it comes with beautiful meat. Keep that in mind, everybody. Go ahead, Jamie. The floor is yours.
and I haven't eaten anything all day, Greg, so that looks really good.
Yeah.
I just want to say you're very blessed there. But I don't know. I missed the first part of your show. I don't know if people realize this or not. You know, you talked about basketball, over and over, and Sankey has to, the expansion of the tournament. And the Big East media deal, the basketball media deal has come out, and they are netting in $480 million to the surprise of just about everybody there, I believe. You can go look those articles up and see this is a huge deal, a huge win for the Big East.
Yeah.
And this is proving your point about the value of basketball. I've talked to two people this week, one of my normal sources. There was also the gentleman from ESPN Radio in Birmingham there who's saying it. The SEC right now is going heavily after North Carolina and Duke. And there's a couple of reasons for that. They want to lock down North Carolina. It is priority one, that state. They also feel if they lock in Duke, not only are they a basketball powerhouse and a blue blood, but if they get North Carolina and Duke, they keep the Big Ten out of that state. So you want to talk about maybe the SEC playing a little defense. Now, it's not the only reason, but they want that state. They want that SEC country, and they've got their SEC network located there. They've got an operations center they're building there in Charlotte. They want North Carolina badly. And they also want Virginia badly. And that gets to my next point about why they're going after North Carolina and Duke in this first wave. Duke and Virginia are very, very tied. And a lot of people don't know this. And our friend Ryan Thomas, he let me know a little bit. He's got some firsthand experience about that. But Duke and Virginia are very tied in pharma, also with their law schools. They are very connected.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that I was told, too, is that Virginia has requested Duke to come along with them to the SEC. That's one of the things that they've talked about. So, sorry about that. Still getting over this cold a little bit. But
No problem.
that's one of the things I wanted people to understand when Greg talks about relationships. These schools have lasting relationships. And Immaculate, I don't know if he'll call in or not, but he was just talking about it. I know. Like you have talked about the endowment, the students. There are so many things with those schools, and academics do matter here. So those 3+1. I mean, it's even possible at this point you could see 3 schools out of North Carolina in the SEC on this round, plus Virginia. I'm not going to rule it out. But that's how important the state of North Carolina is. Right now, that's kind of the focus. The basketball thing is just ready to explode, that Big East contract. So I just want people to keep an eye out on that when it comes here. And why people seriously like Florida State. I know you've been saying it, and I love the Florida State fans. I love JD and everything, but the Big Ten knows this, right? There's not this tug of war for Florida State between the SEC and the Big Ten. The SEC is totally focused on that state of North Carolina. You talked about Notre Dame. I don't know if people realize this in the Big Ten media deal that was signed. It's an extra, what was it, 2.3? I mean, it's an insane amount. It jumps that media contract if Notre Dame's added. Like, everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact figure, but it's an enormous number if Notre Dame joins. So it makes sense what's going on. But yeah, just love the show, Greg.
Yeah.
Just wanted to pass on that info, and I'll get off of here. But Wu Pig Suey, I'm ready for some football.
Yeah, I'm ready for some football. You got that right, Jamie. Thank you so much. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, you take care, Greg.
Beautiful. Yeah, Clemson and Florida State have just a unbelievable brand, valuable brand. So I'm definitely not knocking either program, either athletic department, either university. It's just too unknown right now.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, Mr. Hot Guy is on the line. The floor is yours.
I can't believe I got through.
Yeah, it's busy.
It's phone call
busy.
Olympics tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will try to be as brief as possible, but you banged on the wasp nest for me, buddy.
Good.
I found it just real quick on those rankings. The one that interests me probably the most, and GT at 70 is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But Pitt at 50
What
is
was that?
interesting. Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh
Yeah.
was ranked 50th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in homage to you, being willing to come out here and say something that makes people not very happy with you, I'm going to join you and say something.
Oh.
And there's already someone saying something in chat that's probably not going to be too happy. So when I look at that and I look at where their research is at, and you see where fans are saying, I find it kind of hard to believe that Pitt's going to go to the Big 12. No matter what happens, when you look at them, for them to maybe roll on with a private university conference somewhere is like a publicly funded shield. You know, we're talking about the USC ruling versus Dartmouth ruling coming up. When they're that high and in all these rankings, both the academics and the research, I got to say, that is tough. Now, if Big 12 can pull it off, then amazing. But when people see like a lot of Pitt folks who are really kind of, well, just crapping on the idea, and they're thinking, well, who do those folks think they are? Well, that's who they think they are. That's who they think that they should be rolling with.
Well,
and,
yeah.
you know.
That's the thing, guys. You know, all these universities are great, but the people, these universities, these athletic departments, these presidents want to play with their peers. That's just the way it is. The Pac-12 did not want to break up, period. They didn't want to break up. That's not a shot at the Big 12. There's not a shot against anybody. They did not want to break up. But they had to at the end. For their front porch of the university weren't going to get any exposure. They were fearful, scared. Yormark beat Kliavkoff badly in those meeting negotiations. He took the deal, Yormark. What Immaculate is saying is, everything being even, Pittsburgh wants to play with their peers. There's also this other thing where schools want to get to the highest ground possible. So, and I think Immaculate would agree with me, if it looks like the Big 12 is much the higher ground than the ACC and the water's rushing in and the ACC is declining in value, and that's going to be Yormark's goal, then Pittsburgh might have to move. But everything being even, Pittsburgh's going to want to play with their peers, just like Iowa wants to play with their peers. The Buckeyes want to play with their peers. Someday, if the SEC is twice as valuable as the Big Ten, then maybe Iowa and Ohio State in the top athletic departments in the Big Ten might take a look at doing something crazy, breaking off something, might do something. But these Big Ten universities want to play with each other. These SEC universities want to play with each other. It's just, that's how it is. Sorry to interrupt you, Immaculate. Go ahead. You got the floor for as long as you want it.
You touched upon something that I wanted to go into as well, and that's the Florida State and Clemson edition. Once again, I took hell from people about my thoughts that I did not believe that a Florida State-Clemson combination is one that moves the president.
Yeah.
And
you were correct.
Nothing against them.
Yeah.
I mean, top-tier football programs, if you're going into the South, it makes total sense for people to think that that's the best combo possible. I get it. But that's just not how this works for the Big Ten from what I've seen. Now, if they were to change their whole MO on how they face realignment, and what you're saying, when you're talking about relationships, man, I was clapping when you said that, because that's the one thing that some analysts just cannot wrap their brains around. Because they're trying to find all the numbers, and they're trying to figure out how it all makes sense. And sometimes it doesn't. It just doesn't. You just have to look at this and realize there are some aspects of this that you just cannot attribute a number to.
Yeah.
And
that's one of those things. Like, I don't necessarily think Notre Dame just wants to make the most money possible. I think that there are some other aspects, like relationships, that are the reason why they have not joined the Big Ten yet. Because if it was just about money, they'd be there already. You know, when they possibly might want to make a private university conference, and people will hear me say that and scoff at it, like, well, that's who they want to be with. Like, I'm sorry, building football programs, while it's hard, it's not as hard or as expensive as building up a university.
Yeah.
And that's what these are, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so the ones that can do and want to, they want to help build up their like-minded peers and play with them versus being in conferences where they're kind of getting pushed around with certain decisions being made. You know, we've got governance coming out here any week now. It might be this week. We might finally get the announcement, and we're going to see exactly what it's about.
When Greg Sankey was asked about that Super League that was leaked out, you know, with the 80 teams, and there were 10 teams, there were 10-team divisions, I guess you call them. What was the first thing Greg Sankey said? He said, the way it ain't going to work because you've got schools in the same division that academically does not fit. In other words, he was saying, you had schools in the same division with other schools, they're not going to abide by it because they want to play with their peers. Okay? If you go back and look at what was leaked, there was some of those divisions, man, there was no way that was going to happen. That's what Sankey said first, that the reason why it wasn't going to work that way. Because schools want to play with their peers. Go ahead, Immaculate.
Yeah, I remember looking at that and looking at, people would look at like maybe one or two of the divisions and say, oh, that's perfect. This is a perfect lineup. I'm saying, you're not looking at the whole thing. And you're going to need to agree. And some of those are terrible. And you could just tell people didn't understand the relationships, right? Like, you know, it's not a slight against the idea as a whole. It's a slight of, okay, you didn't make it well enough, so you didn't sell me. You know, it is what it is on that. And just real quick, if I may, before kind of going into the final thing here, I just want to say on the Nebraska situation, I don't think people quite get it. Yeah, the campuses are all there. They have everything to get the higher ratings, but they're not under the same administration. So no rankings group, nothing is going to put it together. The AAU is not going to look at it together. They were told when they were removed from the AAU, get it together, get it all under one administration, and you can have credit for it all. Because when they're trying to make deals between these schools, you're trying to make it with the same administration. You're trying to build relationships. Oh, there we go again.
Yeah.
They're trying to build that. And if you have to deal with 3 or 4 different administrations just to break into Nebraska with maybe some research deals, it's just not worth it when they could just go work with another university system that has one person in charge of it. Mm-hmm. And so they were told to do this, and they have not done it yet because they're all in their little fiefdoms, and that's why they're now playing fear games to try to get everyone to come together. And if they did, Nebraska might even get their AAU status back. But that's just on that for people to understand. Like, it does matter. They need to have one administration over the whole thing. That's why they're taking the medical campus president, chancellor, president, I do believe is what they call them there, and they're going to give them the opening at the main campus so that they can finally break up these 2 fiefdoms and bring it in and have it under one administration. So that's just a little on that. Last thing I just want to touch on, we already did a little bit, man, and this is pretty exciting this week. If we get this judge to approve the settlement and those governance details come out, I think we're going to start to see how all this plays out.
Yeah.
We're going to understand why it's now so important who is in your conference with you, because voting rights are going to matter more than ever. When conferences can write their own rules, this is an entirely different game.
Yes.
I mean, if people are saying, well, how does a private conference make the same as, these other ones, especially if Notre Dame wants to be it? Well, they can write their own rules as to how many conference games they have. They can write their own rules for any of this. It doesn't have to fit a mold.
You might have a certain number of divisions with the conference tournament. They might have a different one. We're going to see a lot more difference between these conferences than we ever have before. So I'm really hopeful for that. And if it does, I think you're going to have yourself a huge story on your hands, and it'll probably be the first domino that really gets this going.
Yeah, we got a lot of big stories and dominoes coming up. So yeah.
Appreciate it, man. I'm going to get off. Let the next person get on here, and good talking, man. I love it when you hit these topics.
You got it. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Great call by Mr. Hot Guy Immaculate. David Hall puts a Michigan State edged out Pittsburgh to replace Chicago in the Big Ten back in the 50s. And I've talked about that story. Talked about it many times because, again, that was a relationship type of move. That was politics. You had to understand the lay of the land. If we had a YouTube channel back in the 50s, I would have been all over that. Michigan wanted Pittsburgh. Minnesota wanted Michigan State. Pittsburgh was the bigger university. Pittsburgh was the bigger everything. I'll get to it in a second.
Call from
Big Ten, brother.
Big Ten brother, can you just hold on for a minute?
Sure, no problem.
I appreciate it. Just want to talk about this. So, you look at the metrics back in the early 50s, it would have been Pittsburgh over Michigan State. Minnesota had a relationship with Michigan State. Minnesota and Michigan, well, they've always battled each other. It's one of the reasons why Wisconsin and Michigan are so close, because Minnesota is not close with Wisconsin. Anyways, we won't go down that road. But Minnesota sponsored Michigan State. Michigan sponsored Pittsburgh. If you looked at the metrics, if you had a spreadsheet back in the day, it would have been Pittsburgh. But Minnesota had more political power in the Big Ten at that time, and they barely got Michigan State past Pittsburgh, and Michigan State became a Big Ten member. Michigan State wasn't AAU. Michigan State wasn't. They were, compared to the other Big Ten universities at that time, Indiana, Purdue, Ohio State, Northwestern, Minnesota, they did not match up at all, but that relationship aspect. And then ever since then, 8 years later, Michigan State became AAU, and they've been building up their research university ever since. And they're in the middle of the pack, and Michigan State and Minnesota's relationship is still very close. Go ahead, Big Ten brother. Let it rip. What's going on?
Yeah,
sir?
I just want to talk. I don't think the people, and I don't want to get anybody mad, but I don't think the people at Florida State understand. Now, you know me and my brothers played in the Big Ten. I had my brother call a buddy of his who's a AD in the Big Ten. This thing is, it's a lot more complicated than just, oh, they got a good football team, let's bring them in. The Big Ten is, they're funny about this thing. Like Nebraska, they sent a scathing letter to Nebraska about getting their house in order. Now, I'm not saying they're going to kick them out or anything like that, but I mean, it was enough to shake up the athletic director and the president where they left the different universities. So I think that you have to understand that AAU, here, it's important enough where Notre Dame became an AAU university on June 1st, 2023, along with Arizona State. And guess who else? Miami of Florida. They came into the same class. So I would even venture to say, now here's where everyone's going to go crazy. I would even venture to say they would take Notre Dame and Miami even before Florida State, just because of the AAU. What do you think about that?
What was that last part?
That they would take Notre Dame and Miami are in the same class that came in and got their AAU June 1st of 2023. I would say that the Big Ten would probably take Miami and Notre Dame I mean, Notre Dame and North Carolina, but if it wasn't North Carolina, I would think they would turn to Notre Dame and Miami next. Just because of the AAU and the private university status.
It's a possibility, sir. It's a possibility. And Notre Dame and Miami have a relationship.
Yes.
Both private universities. That's a possibility.
See, the other thing too, he said what was interesting. I'm talking about my brother talking to this guy. He said the big picture too. The Big Ten takes wrestling serious, and I don't even know. Does Florida State have a wrestling program or a hockey program?
I don't know. I don't think that's going to play much part of it. Wrestling and hockey aren't going to play any part of it. But what is going to play some part of it is the Big Ten likes for universities to have a broad bandwidth of sponsored sports. They don't necessarily have to have wrestling and hockey, of course not. But the bigger bandwidth of sports. I know all the way back in episode 52 that we had here, when Oregon met with the Big Ten, Oregon was telling the Big Ten, we are going to try to increase our sponsored sports. We're going to add a couple. Now, I don't know how that's going to happen now with all these extra added costs. Maybe Oregon won't have to do it, but that was part of the talks between Oregon and the Big Ten. So, that's part of it, sir. You're correct.
Yes, I think they try to match that up. The thing that Notre Dame, I mean, obviously Notre Dame has the advantage, but I mean, Notre Dame knew, as great as they are as far as the weight that they carry, they even knew to go ahead and get their AAU status. I mean, for them to make a move on that, they just got it a year ago, June 1st in 2023. They even realized, you know what, the way things are changing, let's just go ahead and take care of it. Because it doesn't happen overnight. It took 10 years for them to finally become AAU, along with Arizona State, Miami, and I think Washington and St. Louis all came in the same class. But that's a bigger deal than people think with the Big Ten. I think they're making they're taking that too light. Like, oh, Florida State's got a great record. They're not going to care about the AAU. I think it's a lot more important to these presidents than people realize.
I'll just say this. Florida State has an incredible, valuable brand. They're an emerging research university. They have taken great strides. They're probably going to need a good partner with them, and they might get it. But it's not an automatic thing, and we're not looking. And the Big Ten is not looking to rush in and make a decision until they are sure about the two tent poles, North Carolina and Notre Dame. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But you're bringing up a lot of good points.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Big Ten will sit back. If they have to wait 2, 3, 4 years on Notre Dame, they'll wait. I really believe that. I don't think they're going to jump at anything.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's it. I just wanted to, that AAU, I think people just, that's no big deal. They're going to do it's just not about football with the Big Ten. It's not. They're academics, the presidents. I'm talking about the presidents of these universities, Northwestern and Michigan. I mean, Michigan is third in that AAU behind Johns Hopkins and the University of California. Michigan is third in that list of AAU, and they're, Northwestern's like 7th or 8th. They're just not going to, I don't think that they're going to just open up the door without that. I mean, you better really be working on it. If they let you in, you better be a year or 2, maybe 3 years away from getting it. But I don't think they're going to just let people in that aren't even trying to get that. I know, that's what I think.
Got it.
That's it, Greg.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, bye-bye.
You got it. Great call, Joe Z. I do apologize. I should have posted this earlier. Joe Z, my apologies. I'll take a heaping helping of Knowles and Kane with a side of national champ, Rambling Wreck. Would 21 schools be okay? Thanks, Gopher Godfather. Thank you, Joe Z, for becoming an early peak Cloak and Dagger member of this channel for the 7th month. Holy smokes. Joe Z, you are hereby officially knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much for your generosity and for all your great comments in the chat room. Thank you so very much. Man, there was a comment here that I wanted to get to, and Immaculate, when we get new governance, the rules governing the ability to split sports up between conferences, that will probably change. We'll find out. I don't really think the Big Ten is going to take part in, I think Big Ten baseball is going to remain Big Ten baseball. Big Ten softball is going to be Big Ten softball. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. One of the very interesting things that we're going to be finding out here real soon. Morris Simmons, Florida State sponsored sports are 18, and they're adding 2 more. Rock and Rant. No one is making long-term conference decisions based on one season of football performance. Oklahoma State has a wrestling team, not just a wrestling team, a legendary program, wrestling program, the Cowboys. Big time wrestling. Holy smokes. Well, why doesn't the Big Ten just take former SEC member Tulane then? Because their athletic department isn't valuable enough, right? It's an athletic conference. All right, you got to have some sort of combination of both. In Tulane, great university. I had a niece that lived basically a block away from Tulane. She was a teacher. Or she is a teacher. But they moved. They moved out to California. But yeah, Tulane is an incredible university. But they don't have, they're not a Big Ten university. Rock and Rant brings up a good, AAU has only added 12 schools in 24 years. One group of 6 at a time was an outlier, no question. That was incredible. We did a live show when that was breaking news. I could not believe it. My jaw hit the floor. University of South Florida, Miami of Florida, Notre Dame. The list went on and on and on. 6 of them at one time. Wow. Again, this was just to show an illustration of slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the moment last. It's just not going to be a rush job for the Big Ten. For lots of reasons. Some of them I have not been able to express to you. They're just not going to rush in. We had to turn the ship around. We had to pull down the odds. Nothing against any of the ACC schools or anybody else. It's just what we were told, and we were told in a number of different ways. So we had to do it. We had to tear down the odds. We don't know what's going to happen. I know this is college football's peek around the corner. I'm supposed to be giving you a peek around the corner. I cannot. I only can say that the SEC's number 1 target is North Carolina. The Big Ten's number 1 target is Notre Dame in North Carolina. And then we're going to have to, those are the biggest dominoes. We're going to have to figure out what happens after that. There is no offers. Nothing is a done deal. It's totally impossible for that to be the case. The SEC has not offered North Carolina. It's impossible. It's illegal.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, Mr. Bearcat, the floor is yours. What's going on, sir?
Well, I just woke up out of my recliner and REM sleep, and I may or may not be sleepwalking. For God's sakes, Greg, start a show earlier, will you? For us old guys.
I couldn't.
Huh?
I couldn't.
Huh?
I went to a baby shower. I had to go to the baby shower for the good of the household. I had to go with the wife. But yeah, so I scrambled back here and prepped a little bit more. Saturday night is all right for PATC. I do
That's
acknowledge
right.
it's a little late.
That's right. Hey, you're talking about the Big Ten not being in a hurry.
Yeah.
If a settlement does happen in the ACC or just between Clemson and Florida State and the ACC,
Yep.
what do you foresee the SEC doing if there's a settlement or, things come to pass where Clemson and Florida State are free? I know they want North Carolina, but is the SEC willing to wait?
They'll if Florida State and Clemson are free tomorrow. Now there's rumors that there's going to be some announcement that's going around the Florida State message boards that there's going to be some announcement Monday, July 1st, or some sort of news is going to break. I have no idea what that's about. I haven't heard anything. I've already checked. So I don't know. And I don't think it's about a settlement. I don't know what it's about, to be honest with you. But let's just pretend there's a settlement Monday, July 1st. I think the SEC, these schools would call the SEC, and the SEC would have some questions like, do you know the day you're going to get out? Da-da-da. They're going to check with their legal counsel, and they're going to set up some meetings, right? Big Ten's going to do the same thing. But the SEC is, probably going to get a call from North Carolina. The SEC will accept the call, and they'll poke and prod about North Carolina. You guys gonna go into the courts and all that, da 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 da, and things are gonna be, cloak and dagger, a lot of meetings, and we'll see if North Carolina gets out, how they can get out, what's the money. I know more about the big, other than North Carolina being the number one target for the SEC. I know the Big Ten is not going to rush in and say, here's an offer. They're not going to do that.
Right. Well, my point is, North Carolina, Florida State and Clemson are leading the parade, obviously.
Yeah.
Would the SEC and Big Ten make them wait to see what happens with North Carolina?
What was that question, Steve?
Would the SEC and Big Ten make Florida State and Clemson hang in limbo until they find out what North Carolina is going to do? I think it's pretty obvious what North Carolina would do. But
the Big Ten for sure. The SEC, I'm not going to say for sure because they might have. The SEC has more control. The SEC potentially has more control over all this. And they might know. They might have this mission, maybe to eat first, second, third, and fourth, and but yeah, everything being even, I would say there will be the SEC is going to want to know the temperature at North Carolina before they move on anything else. You always start with the biggest dominoes, and North Carolina is the biggest domino.
Yep. All right, Greg, won't take much more of your time. I'm just sitting around thinking, okay, if Clemson and Florida State somehow get free, and then there's North Carolina, who the Big Ten and SEC would both like to have, what happens,
Yeah.
What happens going forward? Hey, have a good evening. It's almost morning where I am, so tell me good morning. All right, take care, all right?
Appreciate it, Barry Cat. Thank you, Steve.
Yep, see ya. Bye.
Great call. AZ Buckeye 96. Texas and Oklahoma reached out to the SEC. Yes, they did. They reached out together.
Call from
Edward, the Auburn Tiger.
Edward, can you hold on for just a moment, please?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Now, when Texas and Oklahoma reached out to the SEC did say, we'll call you back. Right? I mean, that's, Oklahoma and Texas did not call Greg Sankey, and Sankey picked up the phone and said, holy smokes, you guys want to talk realignment? Let's have a, no, it was, oh, you really want to talk about that? We'll give you a call back. Sankey met with his legal department. Texas and Oklahoma had a few more years left. It was pretty dicey legally. They talked in secret. They did not let a whole lot of presidents know about it in the SEC. And then eventually came out. But yeah, the schools called the conference first. Now, schools are always calling these conferences. I mean, anytime there's a big shakeup, the schools will call the conference and say, what can we do? What can we do? Whatever. And then these conferences have to be careful and say, we'll get back to you, or when are you free of your grant of rights? But legally, these conferences, every single time there's a discussion about conference expansion, anytime the commissioners are sitting down with the president, the legal counsel of the conference is sitting right next to the president. That's how serious they take this. And that is why, one of the reasons why, we can report to you at Peek Around the Corner, and we've been doing this for quite a while, there is no standing offer. The Big Ten does not have a standing offer to North Carolina, to Clemson, to Virginia Tech, to Florida State. They don't, except for one school, and that's Notre Dame, because they're independent. Go ahead, Mr. Auburn Tiger. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, I have forgot to ask you, and I know you said next week that you're going to talk more about the SEC, so I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Josh Pate situation, when he talked about, us having 9 weeks, 9 Saturdays, something being announced. Now, obviously, I'm an SEC guy.
Yeah.
I believe there's a controlled demolition. Mm-hmm. I believe that negotiations are already in play between ESPN, SEC, and ACC. I believe that those teams are not going to be made available because everything will be done in the settlement. With that being said, I was looking at if there's going to be a major announcement. I was looking at the windows between now and the start of the season of when such an announcement can be made. I know, like for the SEC point of view and ACC point of view, you got Texas and Oklahoma being officially announced starting. I think Texas is tomorrow. Oklahoma is all day Monday. You got SMU Monday. So I'm thinking between maybe the 1st of July, maybe before media days, first window, and second window, after media days, but before the August 15th drop date. What do you think about that?
If there is some controlled demolition, if they're going to have to do it in a way that they don't affect some legal stuff. But if it's if again, I think there is a possibility. It's going to be an ESPN SEC controlled demolition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the 4 schools that you and I both think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the timing of it, if this is going to happen, would probably happen, I would assume, if I'm guessing, that's all we're doing, is after the July media days, and before the August 15th, right? Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, if there is going to be a big time controlled demolition, it's going to be ESPN, SEC driven, and I'm just guessing it would happen after SEC media days, which is the 3rd week in July, I think.
Yes, sir.
And then before August 15th. But then again, that's all speculation, guessing.
Of course.
And,
of course.
And I think the odds are very low on it. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really what I was wanting to ask. Because I was just kind of going over that, and I tell you, your body language says a lot more than your words. And every time I've mentioned to you about that, you're close to the vest.
I'm close to the vest. I'm close to the vest on quite a few things right now.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to have a tell, right? If I'm at the poker table with Mr. Auburn Tiger, I don't want to give you a tell. I don't want you to know, Auburn Tiger, if you should stay in, call me, or raise me. Right now, I feel like you're going to raise me, and I might just have to walk away from the table and let you win the pot. I might not. I don't think I can keep up with you. Plus, the Gophers can't keep up with the Tigers anyways. So I think I'm just going to walk away from the table.
Well, Greg, do you still have the tingling feeling that you were saying?
A little bit, sure.
A little bit, okay.
Sure,
okay.
yeah.
Well, listen. Thank you for everything you do. Once again, I'll get off for other callers.
Appreciate
it, sir.
Yeah. Morris Simmons, Big Ten will make a big mistake by not going after Florida State. SEC will dominate college football. Well, the Big Ten might go after Florida State. They might. Florida State is a big, valuable brand. I think there's going to have to be some finessing. Florida State going to have to find the right partner with the Big Ten. Going to have to get everybody on board. And Florida State's going to have to work. Big Ten's going to, there's a lot to it. I don't think, but Florida State, yeah. Big time school, big time brand. No question about it. The SEC already dominates college football. That is correct. And they're going to continue to dominate college football. And we've shown a lot of, again, people, look, I get people coming and saying, no way is North Carolina the number one target of the SEC. And if I was, let's put it this way. Let's pretend. Let's do some pretending here. I get a call tonight, right after I close up this show. I get a call and I'm asked, I've got Richard McAuliffe and Mike Alford on the line. Now, they've probably already done this, but no doubt they've done this. But if they called me and said, Greg, what is the one advice the fat guy from Minnesota can give Florida State? The one thing that Florida State can do right now, obviously Florida State is doing fantastic as an emerging research university. What they've done over the last 8 years, not easy. I mean, their percentage growth, I did a live show on it. They've overachieved. They're doing. Florida State has hit a home run the last 8 years, and if they continue to do what they're doing, they're going to be they're already probably in a lot more comfortable position than Nebraska when it comes to that. But then again, Nebraska is already in the Big Ten. So I got no advice on that. Football brand, I got no advice on that. Florida State location, Florida, beautiful. When it market size doesn't quite metrics, but there's not a whole lot you can do about that anyways. So what would be the one advice I would give to Florida State? Build your relationships to the biggest dominoes of the Big Ten and the SEC. And I'm sure they've already done that, attempted to do it, doing it right now. Remember, these schools can talk to each other. They do talk to each other. They're talking to each other all the time. It's part of the third party talks. So that's one advice I would give, not just to Florida State, to Clemson. North Carolina doesn't need that advice. North Carolina they've had talks with the Big Ten forever. And with the SEC here recently. So that would be the advice I would give to Florida State. And I'm sure that's what they're doing. And then the relationships with Big Ten people and the SEC people. Because that's going to matter. That's going to matter because nothing is done yet. We don't know where Florida State's going to end up. I'm a firm believer that Florida State is not going to be a member of the ACC 3 years from now. I'm a firm believer of that. But nothing is done yet with anybody, with anything. So we're going to close it up. We've been on the air for over 2 hours. It's been a Saturday night is all right for PATC. We went through the U.S. News Global rankings of the top 2,500 universities. We went through the Big Ten and the Magnificent Seven schools plus Georgia Tech. Again, history tells us that the Big Ten would not run in and do a Florida State Clemson combo. If you've just joined us, Go back to earlier in the episode. Check it out. I think most of you, I think we've come to this point in the road. But again, Clemson and Florida State, they have a reason to be confident. They are confident. They want certainty. They're in the courts battling. They're two huge football brands, and football still drives the bus, along with the demographics, the enrollment apocalypse that is coming up. So it's a complicated business, ladies and gentlemen. Complicated business. We only know that we can't have the chalk up on the board. We've been given too much information. We were told to pull back. This has been a month and a day ago that we did that. And I'm more certain now than ever before we made the right decision, even though it got ugly for me, even though it got ugly for PATC, we made the right call. History is going to be very kind to us when history happens. So, but anyways, keep your head on a swivel. Buckle up, brace for impact. We got governance rules coming up. We got July 2nd in Pickens County coming up. We're going to be trying to do a live stream in South Carolina. We got the SEC prediction order finish coming up on Monday. This week is stacked. We got rumors flying out of Florida State. We'll see if any of those come true. I haven't heard a word. I have not heard a word, or I would be jumping on those rumors, but I can't. We haven't heard anything. Nothing's come across our table. So stick with us if you're new to the show, or if you haven't done it yet, you gotta subscribe to our channel. What are you waiting for? We are the College Football Rebel Outpost right here. This is where we talk everything college football. Wait until the college football season starts. Wait till we have watch parties throughout all these games. The big games, every single week, we all come together. We're all putting down our comments during the live game. During halftime, we take phone calls. After the game, we take post-game calls. People are crying on the phone. People are going crazy on the phone. It's unbelievable. Join us all through the college football season. This is going to be the most fascinating football season of our lifetime. Expanded football playoffs? Are you kidding me? These games are going to mean more than they've ever before. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. An example, Kansas State at Tulane, September 7th. That game means more this year than it did last year, the year before, the year before, the year before, the year before, a decade before, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. One example of, and there's going to be thousands of examples during the season. This is going to be the most dramatic. This is going to be the most heartbreaking season ever, because there are more fan bases today, Saturday, June 29th. There are more fan bases who have the belief that they're going to go to the playoffs more today than ever. And that is why we're going to have the most hearts crushed that we've ever had before. And I'm here to watch it all, because I think it's pretty fun. So anyways, if you share the passion, if you share the love of college football, the history, the pageantry, the competition, join us here at College Football. Peek around the corner, subscribe, open up those notifications. You don't know when we're coming on live. It's late at night, early in the morning. Sometimes we come on twice in a day. We go where the story goes. And today the story was, we had to explain just a little bit more why the Big Ten is going to be deliberate and cautious during the next realignment wave. We have not been able to share everything. But I sit here today on June 29th, a month and a day after we had to rip down those chalk odds on what's going to happen in this realignment wave. And I'm more convinced than ever, no question about it. We made the right call, even though it got a little bit ugly for your host. So stick with us. Stay with us. Someday we're going to go back in the Holy Smokes Theater. There's going to be some movement we can tell you about. But right now, the pause button has been pushed. And when is that settlement going to happen? Is Florida State going to file a notice of withdrawal before August 15th? Is some big news going to be breaking out of one of these courthouses? We shall see. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.